So yes, pluralist theory was that contrary to the prevailing wisdom of that time, king should not be having all the powers. It can be divided into committees, nobles, aristocrats. This is how it was. Sovereignty will be fragmented, right? This is what it was. Which one? I'll post this article in your group. Okay, this one. Aditya, sovereignty एक के पास न रहे, fragmented रहे, ruler more than one. But by its very definition, sovereignty is one. Sovereign एक ही हो सकता है. I'll post this article, the Hindu article in your group. It is important. Shall we proceed now? See anything praiseworthy, and I'll tell you how to extract important information and important Antyodaya socialism, right? I'll read that in a short span because, as I told you, I would have already read that article, but I was busy with the 98 volumes, so I could not. Any article, how to find out whether that is important or not. The thing is, Gandhiji is revered for UPSC. Even in essays, every year or the other year, there is a theme on Gandhi. UPSC has this bunch of Gandhians sitting. Okay, 100% I'm confirmed. Because how else can one keep asking questions from the same area? There are people who are considering Gandhiji to be revered, just like our Modi ji. Okay, so Modi ji has elevated Gandhi ji to another level. So that's why in UPSC also we see this imprint. Now, how to see whether this article, I did not read the article, I just told you it's important. How? Because you see intercultural, which means he is talking about the synthesis of Indianness. In India, there is so many culture, there are so many cultures, and then equates it with modernism. So we have also seen in our lessons, in our classes, that Gandhiji did not completely reject the Western notion. He was more than happy to accept that, except for that consumerist approach, which dehumanizes a man. Okay, the rest he was willing to accept. He was not against modernity. He was against consumerism. He was not against capitalism like Marx. He said capitalist is a trustee. So he is willing to learn good things from West, right? Liberty, equality. He was himself inspired by Leo Tolstoy. Okay, and he has inspired many people, right from Nelson Mandela to any American, you can say, not directly, but still. So, and now in this article, there are reference given to Socrates, Martin Luther King. Yes, Martin Luther King Jr. See, yes, this name. How can I forget? Anti-racist champion. Now, this guy has given references to. I saw name of all our thinkers: Jainism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Christ, Socrates, Tolstoy, Ruskin, Thoreau. We have mentioned these names. So again, he is saying that what good things Gandhi learned from Buddha, Jaina, the concept of aparigraha, the concept of trusteeships comes from Jain concept of aparigraha. Do not, you know why he says trusteeship? Because do not have more than what is required. If you need a certain amount of food, having more than that certain amount would amount to theft, is what the concept of aparigraha in Jainism is. Now, Gandhi's concept of trusteeship is inspired by this Jainist concept, right? So this article is talking about a cross section of ideas. That's again true. Gandhiji was inspired by this. Then the ethical mode of conduct, practical idealism. The writer has written. Actually, there is nothing practical about any form of idealism, but then you can use it. Establishing a just society hinges on moral growth in humankind, where an undisciplined and unrestrained individual gives his place to empathetic humanism. He talks about, of course. So when you come across terms that are there in your optional syllabus, you understand that this is important. Remember this: when you come across terms in a certain article that are already mentioned in your syllabus or in any of our classes, there is nothing called practical idealism, but you can use that. Okay, if I start quoting from his collected volumes, you all will be shocked, but I won't. So there are many things. You need to pick things that will come handy for your exam, right? So this article is important. And do not criticize Gandhiji in your exam. Do not. I am warning you, especially in your main, neither in your GS, neither in your optional. In interview, because you will be sitting there with a host of other gentlemen. So there are ways how you convey your disagreements, not through blatant. Okay, you can say that maybe he was great, but not everyone is great. So great expects greatness from everyone. This is not the case. Utopia. There are ways and means through which you have to voice your dissent in an interview board. वहाँ पे कम से कम स्कोप है तुम्हारे पास, right? In interview, मेंस में तो स्कोप ही नहीं है. So do not criticize him. Never. Okay. Now let us start. Ambedkar to some extent was influenced by Marxism, but being a Democrat, he does not approve of that. Even he somewhere even says that I am a staunch enemy of the communist. Now, communists are the practical version of Karl Marx. So, Marxism, in theory, he says maybe to some extent it works, but because he believes in a constitution, he believes in democracy, he will never agree completely with Marx. And he says that you have no understanding of Indian society. What would Marx say? Class war? For newcomers who have not studied Karl Marx, Karl Marx के लिए संसार में सिर्फ दो प्रकार के लोग हैं. कौन कौन से? Please someone tell me. Haves and have-nots. Have or have not का मतलब? Proletariat and bourgeois. Good. अरे explain to someone who has not heard of Karl Marx. You all are saying proletariat and bourgeois. Priyanka, did you understand? So there are just two types of people in this world: rich and poor. And because rich wants to exploit the poor, that is why poor will never work with the rich. And finally, there will be a bloody revolution. And after that bloody revolution, poor will come to power. Dictatorship of proletariat. This is what Karl Marx says. Ambedkar says, come to India. I'll show you more fault lines than rich and poor. India is not just a class divide, a regional divide, religious divide, casteist divide, and then there is rich and poor divide. Then there is occupational divide. So Ambedkar says that you have no understanding. These Marxists have, these communists have no understanding of Indian society, and they want to tell us that how to bring a Marxist revolution. In India, there is no class war as such Karl Marx has envisioned. There are classes within classes and subclasses and caste, and so many fault lines are here. How can you say there is a class war? Understood all of you? Rekha, did you? No, I'll tell you where he was influenced by Marx. Did you? He was influenced by Marx to the extent that because of imperialism, India is under the foreign clutches. Okay, but he does not believe in on that class theory. He favors democracy, so he will not never accept Marxism. And Marx, for Marx, state shall wither away. State is not needed. For Ambedkar, everything will come through state, and he never believes in direct methods. Okay, he favors constitutional methods. He has criticized Gandhi for that. For Marx, religion is the opium. For Ambedkar, Buddhism offers solace to the soul. Buddhism can nourish human soul. How can he agree with Karl Marx? One or two ideas. That's why I'm written to some extent. He has himself said, I am a staunch enemy of the communist. Understood? So that is all the Ambedkar. How did Marx promote mechanization? If you can elaborate on it, Sarath. That's what I'm asking. How did he promote mechanization? Sarath, we are waiting. If you want, you can unmute yourself and speak. Why reading things from blog and everything? See, there has to be a context to it. Now, Marx is so much against religion, but Marxist himself made Marxism a religion, right? And Marx became the prophet of Marxist. So I have to see the context into which this line was written. I cannot judge it like that. How Marx is mechanist? Emphasis on class war, maybe that will make him make a mechanist, because the same old rudimentary theory even being applied to countries like India where there is more than one class. Okay, understood? And for a sure answer from me, I need to see the entire thing. Better do not get into all these complexities. Stick with what is there in the syllabus and the class. That's it. So that is all about Ambedkar. And I think I have not sent you that. Apart from these PPTs, I have not sent you anything, right? On Gandhi and Ambedkar. Okay. I have this in mind. I will. Definitely, I will. Now, time for our next thinker. Sorry, Ambedkar nahi, Aurobindo. So, what would Aurobindo, in order to understand Aurobindo, we need to know the entire, his background. Actually, a genius. He's a genius. His intellect is at another level. He used to write sentences, one page sentence without a comma or full stop. A multilingual giant of an intellectual. And he's more of a philosopher than a political thinker, more into spirituality than politics. But since he's given in our syllabus as a political thinker, that is why we need to read something about him. What are his thoughts, the political thoughts? So Aurobindo is an extremist leader. Now, if you can tell me who were extremists, can you? Azad was a revolutionary. No, not Azad. Azad was a revolutionary. Come on. Again, Bhagat Singh was a revolutionary. Okay, stop. I am repeating it again. Do not forget it now. First came moderates, Gokhale, Banerjee, Tayyabji, okay, who believed in constitutional method, who had this feeling that Britishers are very good people. We are more loyal servants of British than the British themselves, is what W.C. Banerjee, the first president of Congress, said in the inaugural session. Until 1930, every session of Congress used to start with the song Long Live the Queen. So they were moderate people, the founders of the Congress. They believed in writing love letters. Dear sir, most humbly we beg to request this and that, seeking appointment, that Britishers are good people. So if we tell them what the Indians need, they will do that. Having faith in British because they have brought so many good things to us, the railways, the means of communication, so on and so forth. These were the moderates. Okay. Now, after moderates comes extremists, the name that you mentioned just now, Aditya, Tilak, Lal Bal Pal, Lala Lajpat Rai, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Bipin Chandra Pal. The fourth one is Aurobindo. Now, they would say they believe in direct actions. What is direct action? Strike. Tilak would say, Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it. No moderate would say that. Moderates were like, an attached office to the English, because they had this belief that Britishers are very good people. They are so modern and so democratic and so cultured. They will do good to us. Ki baat hai, right? 1885, this was the view. Then come extremists in by 1905. Yes, 1885. After 15 years come extremists, and they say no, this is not how it is going to work. Not the moderate way. We will seek direct action. We will ask them that why are you doing like this? We will go for strikes. We will go for hartals. These were that we will protest. Instead of writing love letters, we will protest. And then come the revolutionary who say neither protest nor love letters. We will throw bombs. 1857 revolt is in passe. Congress was formed in 1885. Leave revolt. No, moderates did not learn from 1857 revolt. 1857. Seriously, guys, you have not read history at all. Am I right? I am right? You have not read history at all. You have not studied it properly. For civil services preparation, you have not read. That's why. That's why this confusion. I completely understand, and there is nothing to worry about it. Nothing to worry about it. Nothing. See. Let us try to focus on things that we are discussing right now, one at a time. So many general studies paper, then you're optional. So don't get confused. We are moving in a very algorithmic way. You did your NCRTs of polity, we started with the optional. And then we will come to the IGP part. For that, I have been told that I need to come to your place. I need to come to Hyderabad to take IGP class. Let us hope it happens, maybe if not in October, then in November. So then we will see the polity part also in detail. That's why you are saying these things. 1857 revolt, moderates not being inspired. Actually, 1857 revolt was not a pan-Indian phenomena. It was restricted to few parts of India. As historian R.C. Majumdar would call it, neither first nor revolt nor for independence. Okay, so that is why. And here we have to deal with people in Indian political thought who were also into freedom struggle, Ambedkar, Gandhi, Aurobindo. So that is why some confusion. Of course, Shreyas, the syllabus will be done. Why are you worried? Exam is next year, June, I guess. So we are October. Don't worry, please. See. Acha, I'll give you something. I'll tell you. All those who are appearing next year for the UPSC. I'll come to Aurobindo. All those who are appearing next year, let me allay these fears, okay? Because if these fears stay, your preparation will be hampered. listen carefully for 2 to 3 minutes. How do you prepare yourself for the next year exam? You have to appear for a prelims, GS plus CSAT. Then you have to appear for main, 4 general studies paper, 1 essay and 1 optional. Now there are some parts which are overlapping in both pre and mains. Indian history, Indian constitution and polity, environment, ecology, current affairs, science and tech, geography, entire geography, right? So these parts are common to both pre and mains. Then there are certain parts which are exclusive for main: internal security, paper 4 ethics, social issues, world history, disaster management. Understanding these things, these are exclusively for main exam. They are not asked in prelim. Your optional, exclusive for main, not in your pre. So what is the right approach? The right approach is that during this time we should focus on those areas which are in main, because as the exam approaches, as your prelims approaches, you need to be more into the prelims mode. So gradually we will see those areas which are common, and then we will see those areas which are exclusive for prelims. So when June approaches, when June the 27th approaches, we would wish that in Feb and March we are studying those things that are exclusively in your prelims. उस समय क्या आपको पॉल साइंस ऑप्शनल पढ़ाऊं? If you are studying optional or ethics or internal security or social issues or world history in March, then there is something wrong with your strategy. Did you understand this or not? So now is the time to wrap up optional, complete it once, understand everything. Because as June approaches, you have to prepare India Yearbook, you have to prepare economic survey, budget, you have to be into exclusive prelims mode. Did you understand this? All of you? Now is the time for exclusive main preparation, and we have this liberty for few months. Then we have to cover those areas which are in both main and pre. Then as June approaches, we have to remove everything that is in main and exclusive pre-preparation happens. And then in June and last days of May, maybe 3rd and 4th week of May and entire June, only the test, mock test, mock test. You keep encircling the circles, objective test. That is how this exam is done. After that, you again take out your, imagine in July 1st week, when you open your pol science optional notes, having covered these things now, you will be in a better position, trust me. Now move back to Aurobindo. So, and whatever these fears or Priyanka, I cannot give the exact answer as of now. I have to discuss this with Ram sir. But trust you me, please believe that the best strategy is that now onwards, currently, we should cover those areas which are either in mains or in both. Because there are certain, you don't have to remember the hundreds of government scheme for your main exam, but for prelims you have to. And every year Modi ji is launching so many things. So before your prelims, there will be, this thick book, India Yearbook. I hope you have seen that. That will be released. So you need to read from that. You need to understand things from that. That is exclusive pre-preparation. The book is released in the month of Feb last. Okay. So no point going exclusive prelims at this juncture. The rest we'll keep. We have made plans accordingly. And this was my input. Don't worry. So whatever fears you have, you can send me on telegrams. We can talk on these things. Also, now coming back to our course, Aurobindo. So Sri Aurobindo, as I told you, a very learned, very intellectual, very revolutionary type of guy, but he preferred to stay extremist. He did not venture into revolution like Chandrasekhar Azad and Bhagat Singh and all those people. Gandhi was neither a moderate nor an extremist. Wherever needed, he would go on direct this protest. Wherever needed, he would talk to the British. Of course, not a revolutionary. He did not believe in non-violence. That we know. So now what happens? Aurobindo comes, and Aurobindo says Aurobindo was educated in England. Okay, there also he was topping in Cambridge. He was a topper. So he learned good things from West. He cherished good things from India, and then he said that West has kept on moving. India has become stagnant because of our dogmas, our conservatism, our colonial mindset, which has been keeping us in dark because of the foreign rule that has happened. So he says that these Congress moderates cannot do anything. They are under severe hallucinations. They are projecting British in a very bad way, in a very wrong way. What they think of British is not the case. Because moderates were thinking that Britishers are good people, they would serve India. If we let them know how to serve India, no, no, this is not going to happen. And Congress has to be a mass movement. This he said in 1911 that Congress has to be a mass movement. Okay, so this was Aurobindo. Now his definition of Swaraj, his political thoughts, his early background, this we have to cover today. Okay, now introduction is done. Doesn't he look like a seer, a sage? Baba ji nahi lag raha hai? And this is 15th. Someone asked this question that it was he was born on 15th August. See. Try to understand. Yeah, slightly he looks like Tagore. So all these big beard people look the same. So he turned completely into spiritualism after one case. Yeah, that's what I said. So he turned completely. He made an ashram in Puducherry. He did not move out of his house for good 25 years. Imagine living in a room for 25 years. And he talks about something called internal yoga, involution and evolution, from where a man can be transcended to the level of what he calls Sachidanand Swarup. Now, all this is his philosophy. Okay, we are not going to the philosophy because that is very, very tough to comprehend for normal mortals. In order to read and understand Aurobindo, you have to invest a lot of time. He is not for normal beings. He is not for normal mortals. You have to completely devote yourself with passion to understand what he said. He has written commentaries on Gita also. Okay, so what happens is, let us see his political thoughts. That is important for the exam. He was a renowned and important personality in the history of Indian resurgence and Indian nationalism. Aurobindo had a versatile brilliance. Versatile means different types of. He was a great poet, a thoughtful thinker, a distinguished metaphysician. What is metaphysics? Any idea? Any idea what is metaphysics? No one. Actually, I have sent you a terms glossary. Have you read that? Not abstract. Yeah, you can say that where physics stops, metaphysics starts. Okay, nature of mind, these things. Okay, God, soul, these things are metaphysics. So he's a great prophet and a passionate patriot. Prophet as in he no relevant to reality, but yes, relation between mind and matter. This would be an apt definition. It is always related to philosophy, Priyanka, you are right. So this is how we can define Aurobindo. We can introduce Aurobindo. Now, Aurobindo's upbringing was completely Western. Okay, for a period of 14 years, from 79 to 1893, he studied in England, and there he showed extraordinary intellectual capabilities. English were surprised that who is this Indian? How does he know so much and excels at everything that he does? In college, of course. So he learned various classical and modern European languages. During his Cambridge University days, he began to take an interest in Indian politics. Now, again, I have to tell you a bit of history. Heard of these people? Lala Hardayal, Bikaji Kama, Coffee House, Savarkar, you must have heard about, Madanlal Dhingra. So all these people are the early revolutionaries. Okay, now what were they doing? Like Savarkar was handling Abhinav Bharat, an institution, and Coffee House abroad in London. Then they shifted it to maybe Paris. I was able to recall where. In New York, there was this Gadar party. Lala Hardayal, Bhai Parmanand, Bikaji Kama were the members. So these were the predecessors to Bhagat Singh and Chandrasekhar Azad and Sukhdev and Rajgurus. Okay, Singh and Sukhdev were contemporaries of Gandhi. Like when Gandhi was doing non-violence, they were blasting the bombs. These people were there during his time. Okay, in late 19th century, the last quarter of 19th century. So there, because they formed these associations abroad, and they used to rally with the NRIs of those times to fund the freedom movement in India. So there they came across these things. There Aurobindo met few revolutionaries, and there he developed interest in Indian politics. That what is happening here, and all these were very young people, so he was naturally attached with these people. Now he became a fierce patriot. Now you see, Aurobindo's writing reflect diverse influences. He is not influenced by one. Like all of us must be influenced by a range of people, right? You cannot say that, or can you, that you are what you are because of that one person. Your thoughts, your positions, your reflections, your writings, your speeches. There has to be a multiple influence, right? That is how you enrich your personality. Sure, why to mind? You should have said this earlier. What is there to mind?
Great. You should have said this earlier. Nothing to mind here. So you see that there is a influence of quite large number of, not large but selected number of people on him. So the Indian tradition of idealism in philosophy seems to have impressed him the most. Okay. Now for that you need to read quite Indian philosophy. We are not going to that. Great European philosophers from Homer to Goethe influenced him the maximum during his formative period, and the study of Gita, Upanishads, and Vedanta had a deep impact on his political thinking. So how Gita, Upanishads, and Vedanta? Because he will believe under the after reading all these things, and he has read the original versions. Okay, he would say that we Indians are so superior as in India is destined to become the spiritual leader of the world. We are the one who came up with Vedantas and Upanishads and Gitas. So we are by default the natural spiritual leader of the world. He was influenced by Swami Vivekananda also. And India can become a spiritual world leader only when it becomes free. And then he reads Gita, he reads Upanishad, where he says that human being is a manifestation of same Ishwar, Aham Brahmasmi, and everything. So how can British exploit us? Is his question. You see how religious learnings are impacting his political thinking. Understanding it, how Gita, Upanishad, and Vedanta are impacting his political thinking. Now, from here onwards, the highest synthesis of the genius of Asia and the genius of Europe is how Roman Roland describes him. Highest synthesis. Asia has so much of genius. Asia has Vedas, Upanishads, Gita, Buddhism, Jainism, and Europe also has some genius like Plato and Aristotle and the modern ones, Voltaire and everything. So Aurobindo is the highest synthesis. Synthesis, not that Karl Marx thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Synthesis is a righteous mixture of two constituents. So he's the highest, is how Roman Roland describes him. He's an English thinker. Now he believed that the writing of Vedantic sages and the Buddha reflect the genius of Indian mind. See, Buddha and Vedas are not entirely different. They are almost same. Buddha is also called crypto-optimistic. Did I tell you this? No, Gandhi also says the same thing. Gandhi does not hate even criminals because he is the manifestation of same Brahman. That is why Gandhi would attempt to reform. Or Aurobindo would say, you cannot suppress me because I am manifestation of same Brahman. The interpretations are same of Aham Brahmasmi, but the impact is different. Did you understand this? गांधी सामने वाले को सुधारने में लग जाएंगे और बिंदु बोलेंगे सामने वाला मेरे पे कैसे ऑपरेशन कर सकता है. वाई गांधी सुधार रहे हैं? बिकॉज Gandhi sees Brahman in him. Why Aurobindo not accepting violence on himself? Because I am the Brahman. Yes. That way it's true. So writings of Vedantic sages and Buddha reflect the genius of India. However, at a later stage, according to Aurobindo, Indian philosophical tradition became narrow in outlook and lost its dynamism and vitality. It was very dynamic. People were questioning things. It was vital because there were thinkers who used to bring vitality and dynamism. If there is a question, they provided solutions. But now what happened? With passage of time, it became dogmatic, it became conservative, and lost its dynamism and vitality because of the external aggression, the invasions, and everything. This is how he sees it. Now, further, he would say nationalism, his very revered concept. Western philosophy has managed to retain its dynamism and continue to grow. Aurobindo wanted to combine the best elements of Indian and Western philosophical traditions. Let us bring them together so that we can usher something new. Aurobindo realized that moderate rationalism cannot attract masses and youth. I told you he's very critical of moderates. Pure moderate nationalism. You keep saying, see, the only contribution of moderates, can anyone tell me the only contribution of moderates towards, no, there are many contributions. Where they have criticized the English? Priyanka, I'll answer your question. First, where moderates have criticized the English? No. Moderates have been very critical of British economic policy. Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. Book written by Dadabhai Naroji, founding father of Congress, moderate leader. This question was asked in your prelims, UPSC. So they have heavily criticized the economic policies. Rest everywhere, they are like, oh, they are good people, but they are causing poverty. they are very critical of the economic policies of British. Okay, so Aurobindo says that just by being critical of economic policies and by catering, trying to appease them on political front, you cannot bring masses and youth with yourself, right? Now, Priyanka, you had this question. See, all of you listen. Anyways, you have to read this in your ancient history. Buddha came in 6th century BC when later Vedic era was already there. And during later Vedic era, there were a lot of confusions and apprehensions in Indian society, the Hinduism of that time. Mostly the priests, the Brahmins, again, they were manipulating everyone. Okay, and people were unable to comprehend Vedas and Upanishads on their own. So gone were the great gurus who can teach people Vedas and Upanishads, and those who were there used to manipulate. So people themselves, they could not understand a single line, so they were very, very fed up. And now comes Buddha. Invention is the mother of necessity is the mother of invention. So here comes two user-friendly religions, Jainism and Buddhism. You don't need a priest, you don't need a text. Atmadipo Bhava, Buddha says, be your own light. So Buddha would first reject the Vedas. He would say these are false texts, do not read them. And when people trusted him, he started his own teachings. Now we see that Buddha has said the same thing which is there in the Upanishads. Upanishads are commentary on Vedas. There are 108 Upanishads which are a commentary on 4 Vedic Samhitas, right? Commentary means in order to understand Vedas, you need to read Upanishads. So Buddhism is nothing. Now we call Buddha as crypto-Upanistic, pseudo-Upanistic, because all what he has said is already there in Upanishad, in Vedas. So yes, message is same. Exact everything, the content is same, just that Buddha used a different language, Pali, which was language of the masses instead of Sanskrit, which was the language of the classes, and preached to everyone, anyone. Right? He popularized it. Content is same. Priyanka, and all of you, will you remember this now? How Buddhism and Upanishads are connected? Others also, and you will remember this again when you will study ancient history for your GS. Remember, he is called pseudo-Upanishadic Buddha. Now, he says that moderates, you cannot attract people because your policies, your approach is wrong. So what needs to be done? You are preferring moderate methods and you believe in the goodness of British rule, which is utter illusion. He wrote an article criticizing this, and the name of the article is New Lamp for the Old. You see, such, kind of novel approach, even the title of the article, and he's critical of those old congressmen, so he's saying New Lamp for the Old. He has criticized the moderate methods. He favors revolutionary methods, passive resistance. He proposed Swadeshi and boycott. But unlike Gandhian boycott, his boycott is not limited to the British goods, but also of their administration, judicial system, education, everything, their newspapers. If you are boycotting, do it wholeheartedly in every aspect. Any problem in this slide? I think it is okay. Yes, it's a more realistic boycott. Now I'm proceeding. Next slide. Questions you have, feel free to ask. Any question, any doubt, any question, quickly. None, I guess. Now, from here, we'll develop his concept of nationalism. He criticized moderates for appreciating British. See what he's saying. Just read this point. Aurobindo is a revolutionary and also an extremist. He was caught in a conspiracy. A bomb was exploded. So it is said that he was behind that. But the judge was his junior in Cambridge University. Not junior, actually contemporary. And the judge said, because of this guy, I always came second, because this guy standing there as an accused always used to come first. So I know what a brilliance, what a genius he is. I cannot punish him. After this incident, Aurobindo took sannyas from politics. He became more of a spiritual leader. Went to Pondicherry, established his ashram. It's still there. There are many followers of Aurobindo, of his internal yoga. So he says that moderates used to say that India is a nation in making because there are so many differences. This is exactly similar to the British view that India is not a country. Okay. There are so many divisions within India. So moderates were also saying the same thing. So he says, Aurobindo says, what are you saying that India is not a nation? You see only later Mughals. Aurangzeb gone. Mughal empire is breaking into many pieces. Different states are being formed. There is Mysore under Hyder Ali. There is Nizam in your Hyderabad. There are Marathas. There are Sikhs. There are Gorkhas. This is not the history of India. He says India has always been a nation long before invasions happened. And India being a nation is not dependent on Congress pandals. So much critically. Understand what is pandal? That what you call in English? So you understand? Tent. Yes, tent. It is not dependent on your tents of Congress pandal. India being a nation. So how can you say that India is not a nation? It's a nation in making. That's exactly what the British say. Aurobindo's nationalism is influenced by Vivekanand, who first talked about spiritual nationalism. Vivekananda talked about that. Now, what he said there, despite its diversity, we all are children of one God, and nationalism should be the religion of youth in India. This is what Vivekananda said. That you may be different, there can be difference, but again, his the effort, the Vivekananda is also a Vedantist, follower of Vedas. So, children of one God, because manifestation of same Brahman, and nationalism should be the religion of youth in India. Have you heard his quote on football? Have you, Vivekananda? Vivekananda's quote? Not. He said, instead of reading Bhagavad Gita, young people should go out and play football or do some exercise. That way, yes. That way, their body will be more healthy. A healthy mind resides in a healthy body. So, when you are healthy, you will understand Bhagavad Gita better. So, play football, do some physical activity, improve your physical health. Only then you will understand the essence of Gita. You cannot understand Gita by just being a, any appropriate word, a lanky shanky type of guy. Okay. So that's what he said, that nationalism is necessary, but physical fitness is equally important. And what else he says, Aurobindo was also an influence with Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, BC Chatterjee, who gave the theory of patriotism. So patriotism, Chatterjee's theory, we don't have to study much, but how are it? Yes. Not everyone can be Aurobindo. You have to develop your physical faculties before you develop your mental faculties, right? Correct. So, Aurobindo represents Mother India as goddess Shakti, the concept of Bharat Mata as we know today. He said that it is Shakti. It is actually, yes. That's Aurobindo. That's Aurobindo. Okay. Now you see political views. That is most important for us. Aurobindo said that India has to become the spiritual leader of the world, and it's not possible without becoming independent. There is so much in store for world out of India. So unless the world recognizes the kind of treasures of India, world is not going to improve. India has to lead the world. Okay, and you see somewhere a small beginning has been made, right? You see people from abroad coming to India for spiritual solace. I'll repeat, he's influenced by Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, who gave theory of patriotism, and Aurobindo represents Mother India as goddess Shakti. So he brings his spiritual nationalism. He equates country to goddess. That is what it is. Okay. Now the next point, that India has to be the spiritual leader, and I'm saying that a small beginning is seen elsewhere. The Yoga Day, world celebrating it. All right. Finally, they are recognizing that this comes from India. India is acknowledging that yes, it is us. And today, day before yesterday, what happened? Hong Kong, people of Hong Kong were protesting in front of China, their embassy, and they were, what they were doing, how they were protesting. Any idea? You will be pleasantly surprised. They were carrying the Indian flags, right? So when they were asked why are you carrying Indian flags, they said because Indians are beating Chinese. So see, whatever the border, the Galwan and border skirmish is happening between India and China, the impression that the world is getting that India is kind of bullying China. Now, this is something which was unimaginable a few years back. Okay, this is the impression that the world is getting. Today, US said that Arunachal, of course, US said that Arunachal is very much a part of India. For the past 70 years, 50 years, we have recognized this fact. And now Chinese are trying to cause trouble in Arunachal. Chinese पता है क्या बोलते हैं अरुणाचल को? साउथ तिब्बत. तो अभी यूएस के सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट ने ये आज बात बोली है, कल बोली थी. Yesterday he said this. Now imagine Hong Kong people carrying Indian tricolor in front of Chinese embassy. It's like teasing them that remember these people have beaten you, whose flag we are waving out. So that's what I'm saying, that how one becomes a spiritual leader. There is something called soft power. Have you discussed this soft power? Because this is there in your IR. I think I have. Yes. I have done. Let us leave it because you have to see that in no, not soft state, soft power. Bollywood, Ayurveda, all these are soft powers. Cricket, dance, cuisine, clothes. Okay, these are the soft powers of India. Hard power is military. Now you see, nation is not a piece of mere land. These are his words. Not a mass of human being, not a figure of speech, not a creation of human mind, not the imagination of people, not an intellectual pastime. And he accuses moderates of doing these things. So what is nation? It's a religion. It has a spirit. Nation is a faith. Okay, it is something more than a geographical unit or a figment of people's imagination. Thus, his concept of nation is profound and very different from the common views of that time, because no one thought that nation can be a religion. No one thought it has a spirit or it's a faith. Most of people, the moderates used to call it a piece of land. What is nation? Land, piece of land, or the people living there, a figure of speech. It is good creation of human mind that I am envisioning this concept of nation. An intellectual pastime? No, he says it is a religion. It has a spirit. It's a faith. So this was remarkably new from what people used to talk at that time, mainly the moderates. Nation is bound to survive. He says gods have blessed India. It is bound to survive as it's immortal. Its strength comes from God. Okay, so he says that rest assured, India is going to come. India is going to arrive itself on the world forum sooner than later, and it's immortal. Its strength is coming from the God. Yes, yes, of course, he's repeating that. He's repeating that. I told you he's inspired by Vivekananda a lot. Okay. Next, you see. So his political views are a result of his spiritual nationalism, which is having a profound impact of Vivekananda. Next, you see, nationalism is a religion by which people try to realize God in their nation. So it's a religion where people try to realize God in their religion and their fellow countrymen. So we are bound by a religion, all of us who are living in this country. That should be the religion. This is what Vivekananda also says. So he's taking nationalism to another level, and he's the first one in modern India to do so. Regarding the motives of the Congress leaders, his observation was that they were not sincere leaders. They were timid and scared of or afraid of displeasing their rulers, the British. He believed that these defects in the organization had adversely affected the national movement in the country because these leaders talked about such fragile language they use, such vulnerable features these people are. They are so timid. They are scared of everything. They are scared that this British will try to harm them or their movement. So because people in country, howsoever small number of people are following them, they are getting affected by these things. That's why the freedom movement has been compromised. It is moving at a snail's pace. Okay. This is his criticism, his political views about Congress. Congress, he thought that the Congress was a middle class organization and therefore did not represent the Indian masses because most of the Indian masses were poor. They were laborers, they were farmers, they were free moving laborers who did not confine themselves to one places. Uh, small petty shop owners. They were not middle class. They were not journalists. They were not advocates. They were not professors. They were not doctors or engineers. This was the newly emerging middle class. See, one more thing I would like to tell you. Again, I will go into history, but then you have to study these things. So I won't hesitate. You know, the Britishers also ushered because they opened factories. What they were doing early, they were carrying the resources from India, Bank of Ganges to Bank of Thames. They made roads so that they could go into our resource-rich areas, carry all those resources in vehicles through roads, through railways, bring it to port cities, load them in ships. The ship would go to England, London. Now they thought why to, and then take people from here also. Take people from here to work there on dirt cheap prices. Whether you pay them, you kill them, no one cares. Now they thought now this country is ours. This country is our colony. Why to carry things? Why not make things here? So they started setting up their factories in India. They cut their cost. The transportation cost was cut. The labor cost was also reduced. They could hire locals. Who would deny them? They would beat them two slaps and you are ready to work for the British. So they cut their cost. Now, because of these factories being established in India, a new middle class also emerged in India. Try to understand, please. Like if a tea factory, okay, a tea estate in Assam or in a Darjeeling. So you need someone to look after that state. You need someone. You have seen those women going into the tea estates. They are carrying something like this hanging on their back. You need at least some people to make that stuff every day, to go there to keep that stuff, store that stuff, refine that stuff so that it can be sold in the market at a higher rate. So this has developed a new entrepreneurial class in India. Yes, the feudal lords, the new bourgeois, as Marx would call it. Okay, so these people who have gained because of British imperialism. Why British imperialism? Because they are a part of it. They are serving the British interest. They are somewhere fitting into the logistics of entire imperial plan of the British. So these people are not the ones who are favoring Congress. The poor don't even know about the Congress. So few elites, few middle class, the newly emergent middle class is already in favor of British because they are getting remuneration, the opportunity. You understand that why he is critical of Congress being confined to middle class, not to the masses. The masses are poor, they are workers, they are farmers, they are laborers, they are daily moving wage earners. Any question till here? All of you understood? I have to repeat anything. Please let me know if I can proceed. So he says these middle class will not come to you. Go to the masses. These newly educated middle class leadership was only interested in gaining power and a place in the Indian polity. Nationalism, in his opinion, was a deep and enthusiastic religious sadhana. Again, he's spiritual, so he talks about religious sadhana. So when you are nationalist, when you are working for the upliftment of your country, you resist those offers. Okay, you can very well be a pretty bourgeois or a neo middle class or lead a comfortable and luxurious life, but when you want to see your country independent, you will not be swayed by these small interests. It's a religious sadhana, and the one who is into real sadhana is not affected by externals. Correct. This is how he described nationalism. Again, a very different concept. Unseen of this in modern India before Aurobindo. Swaraj. India's liberation from foreign domination was the final goal for Aurobindo. That was his final goal. Self-rule by Indian was not merely of economic and political nature. It was necessary for India to perform its spiritual mission. He says that there is so much of adversaries happening everywhere. The world wars he has witnessed both. He passed away in 1950. So he says that there is so much of bad things that are happening. So India has to, kind of liberate the world from these things. So Swaraj, again, his Swaraj is so, enormous that it has scope for entire world into it. Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it. When Tilak said this, he was talking about self-rule, self-government. Indians will be a part of government. That was Tilak Swaraj. Now Gandhi Swaraj, I have already explained you what it was, how amorphous and how not ill-defined it was. Why ill-defined? Because everyone could define it as per his or her own convenience. Okay. Now Aurobindo Swaraj, he is including the welfare of world and all-pervading, all-encompassing, a very gigantic Swaraj he is creating. Because India has this massive burden, an obligation towards world to uplift them. Never heard before? His nationalism and his Swaraj aren't these two concepts very unique to him? Are you understanding or not? We haven't heard of these things before. According to Aurobindo, this limitless reservoir of inner strength and power of people could be channelized through different kinds of political actions, through secret revolutionary propaganda by setting up revolutionary organizations. So how this, see, first thing, India would serve the interest of world when it becomes free. How to become free? Definitely not through the Congress methods. Then they would say, let us go for revolutionary methods. Yes, actually, Aditya, correct, very correct. So you have to be free so that you can guide the world. How you be free? Not by what Congress is doing. This is his method. Political actions, revolution, secret societies. So that bomb case was actually a secret conspiracy where he was caught along with his brother. Propaganda for setting up revolutionary organizations, he would say. Then continuous propaganda against foreign rule through writing, speech, public contact, talk to people, write about it, make inflammatory speeches. Don't be scared of these people. Okay. Go for a narrative. You understand narrative? We have to study this in paper one itself. Discourse. So this is there in your syllabus, optional syllabus. There is something called discourse. Discourse is the narrative. Can you give an example of narrative? No. There is a rape case in UP, right? In fact, there are more than one rape cases in UP in past 1 week. Hathras, Balrampur. I know you will talk about Hathras. Have you heard about Balrampur? That is the power of narrative. That when I say when there is a rape case in UP, you say Hathras. This is narrative. Live example. Okay. For the past 3 days, there have been 13 rapes in Rajasthan. I am quoting a fact. You can verify it after the class is over. Past 3 days, 13 rapes in Rajasthan. But which one are you seeing? Which one are you hearing? Which one are you reading? Hathras. You understood what is narrative? What is discourse? How narrative is being set? How discourses are created? So he would say that let us counter this narrative that Britishers are good and Britishers are this and they are invincible. Cherry picking, I would call it. Cherry picking. See, no sane human can justify rape. Come on, it's criminal. I'm in favor that rapists should be castrated if proven in a court of law. I hope all of you will agree. But then why are some rapes more, talked about than others? This shows insensitivity on our end. Those who are using the dead girl are suiting their own political agendas, right? This is what narrative is, cherry picking. So he would say that let us engage into narrative. Let us talk, discuss, write, make speeches in our interpersonal communication. When I talk to someone, I should tell about this. This is what this is how Aurobindo will bring his Swaraj. Yes, yes, very good, Sarath. Very good, very good, very good. I'm very glad. I'm more than happy today that you are able to equate this with other thinkers. Religious Machiavelli. Of course, you can compare. I'm very happy seeing all these things. Krishna and Sarath, very well done. Yes, this is what Gramsci says, that a Marxist revolution will not happen until the society is prepared for that. How will society be prepared when you will tell the society about it? This is what he's saying. He's preparing the ground for the same, right? So glad that you people are noticing it. It means you have understood the earlier thinkers and you can see the stark contrast and the stark similarities between them. That's how they ask your questions, and I'm now convinced that of course you people will excel in this whenever there will be a comparative analysis. Glad. Now let us continue. He advocated independence of India for following reasons: liberty being the first indispensable condition of rational development, intellectual, moral, individual, and political. All sort of liberty. Liberty, the freedom to do things the way you want. You can call it a synonym for freedom as of now. There is a difference that we'll see later. So liberty is the indispensable, quintessential condition for rational development, for intellectual, moral, individual, all sort of development, and for political. Is in itself a necessity of national life. Hence, it was worth striving for its own sake. That why do we need to remain poor? Why do we need to remain enslaved? We need liberty for all these progress, individual, intellectual, moral, and political progress. So it is worth striving for it. In the process of development of human beings, spiritual and moral advance is more important than material advance. So just because you are gaining from British imperialism, do not side with it. You may gain some material advance, but your spiritual and moral advance will lie in shambles. He is of opinion that India, with her spiritual development, was destined to take the lead for the progress of the world, and for season 2, India must be free. So he's appealing all those new educated and all those newly developed middle class that stop siding for your material gains, because you are losing on spiritual and moral gains. Not worth it at all. He talks about spiritual nationalism. Very interesting concept. India must have Swaraj to live well and happily. For this, Indians should not live as slaves but as free people. His theory of spiritual nationalism, it is argued that though it is called spiritual nationalism, in reality it is religious, as we have known it, and therefore reactionary in character. He was also quite not akin to revolution. He was finding revolution. He says that let there be secret societies, let them engage in propaganda. He himself was caught in a bomb blast case. It was an attempt to mobilize the masses on an emotional basis and detracting their attention from real issues like poverty, economic exploitation, and equality, which are inimical to the progress of the individual as well as the community. It was an appeal to Hindu religious sentiments in the grab of cultural heritage of the land. This is what the critics call him, and this is what few other people also call him, that he is appealing to the emotional side. In the guise of culture, he is promoting religion, especially the Hindu religion. All those attributions to Shakti, Bharat Mata, Kali worship, applying tilak, all these things. What is this? With essence of Hinduism? This is what Lala Lajpat Rai was also accused of. Lala Lajpat Rai used to mobilize people in Ganpati festival. You all know in Maharashtra, Ganesh Puja is such a big, it's like a feast actually. So he used to mobilize people in Ganpati festival. They used to swear by the name of goddess Kali. Ganga, they used to keep Ganges water in their hand and they swear. So everyone said that is why Muslims do not come with you, because you are appealing to the religious side. You are not going for Indian nationalism. Is how the critics call it. So it is an appeal to Hindu religious sentiments in the grab of cultural heritage. Okay, this is how of the land. But then you cannot segregate Hindu heritage from India's cultural heritage. Can you? I mean, come on, it would be a denial. The religion is as old as this country is, right? That is why a Supreme Court. Have you seen the motto of Supreme Court? Yato dharmos tato jaya is what the Supreme Court of India's motto is. Now, where does that come from? Where does Yato dharmos tato jaya come from? Do you know? in Mahabharat, when the war was about to start, Duryodhan went to Gandhari. I hope you have heard Mahabharat. You know who Duryodhan and Gandhari are. And he said, "Bless us, O mother. We are going to fight the Pandavas." You know what Gandhari said? Yato dharmos tato jaya, which means victory will come to those on whose side the dharma is. Indirectly saying, "Beta, you are not going to win." That is the motto of Supreme Court of India. Now, where does that come from? Aha nis seva mahe, your BSNL and MTNL. Vayam Raksham, the Indian Coast Guards. Dharmo Rakshati Rakshita, Mahabharat, Research and Analysis Wing, RAW. RAW's motto is Dharmo Rakshati Rakshita. Paritranaya Sadhunam Vinashaya Chaduskitam, Uttar Pradesh Police. More? You want more? How can you deny the obvious? Okay, so these allegations, they are essentially not an allegation, this is a recognition. Okay, the culture is predominantly Hindu. I'll give you another example. See, I can give you 25 to 30 such examples which I just spoke of. Speaking about national institutions and telling you how they have been inspired by the different Hindu religious texts. And you know, culture is, religion is a part of culture. Even a non-Hindu can be a part of Indian culture. I'll tell you how. Few months before, you know Mohammad Kaif? You all know? Answer me. Arey, batsman India ka tha na, electrifying fielder. Lords Ganguly, right? So Mohammad Kaif, now he's retired. Maybe he's associated with some IPL team. Few months back, he shared his photo with Sachin Tendulkar and wrote on his social media accounts, "My Sudama moment with Lord Krishna." And I was like, dude, that is why I keep saying that culture is more, religion is a subset of culture. Now he's a practicing Muslim, but he knows about Krishna and Sudama. How? And he identifies with Sachin that you are Krishna, I am your Sudama, I am your Bhakt. Because you are Sachin for anyone of the likes of Kaif and Yuvraj, Sachin is God. You all. So he says that this is my Sudama moment with my Krishna. So religion is a part of culture, right? Religion is a subset of culture. So all these things which we are seeing the critiques are not completely true. Did you understand this? All these examples, I hope they make sense to you. No, CAF has not read all these. Let me assure you. Okay. Are you understanding these things or not? Yes. There was no such much influence spiritually. Aurobindo is much ahead of Gandhi. But then the demand, because Aurobindo said that bring the masses, Gandhi is the one who will bring the masses. Methods won't be same, of course. Gandhi will never believe in revolutionary methods. Gandhi will never be caught in a bomb explosion case. Gandhi will appeal to the conscience in a different way. Not why. Gandhi would say, Ishwar Allah Tero Naam. The original bhajan is something else. Do you know that he has edited that bhajan, Raghupati Raghav Rajaram? Ishwar Allah Tero Naam is nowhere a part of the original bhajan. Okay. So Gandhi's methods are different. His methods are more Machiavellian because he knows how it will work. He is not defining Swaraj. He is asking everyone to define it as per his or her own convenience and associate it with the freedom movement. Come to us, fight for India's freedom. Very calculated method. Okay. So one small thing is left about Aurobindo that I'll complete in next class. I intend to take a class tomorrow, and I'll move to the last thinker, M.N. Roy. Okay. Aurobindo will be done in 15 minutes in next class. We'll move to M.N. Roy, and I'll try to wrap up M.N. Roy tomorrow so that our most, the difficult part, the IPT and the WPT, because these things can stretch up to, I know people who teach these things for 2 months, not both IPT and WPT, few thinkers of WPT. So Plato and Aristotle, people can teach these things for 2 months. So we have tried to understand these things. We have noted everything. That fetches you very good marks in your main. You can the thinker. Okay, if you can do that, nothing is going to stop you from scoring good marks. And when someone talks about such anything, and you can see which thinker he is referring to without the speaker mentioning the name. So you see, oh, he's saying something similar to Gandhi or Aurobindo or Syed Ahmad or Plato or Gramsci. Okay, then nothing can stop you in your exam. So let us meet tomorrow. I wrap up the thinker part.